All right, example 3 asks, what is the graph of y equals 1 over x plus 1 minus 2? We want to identify the domain and range. So first off, we want to draw the asymptotes. We know that the asymptotes are going to be at x equals -1 and y equals -2. We know that because h was -1 and k is -2. I know it looks like h is +1, but remember, the original equation is y is equal to a over x minus h plus k. So that minus sign flips the sign of this guy right here. We want to keep that in mind as we're going through this. So our h value is actually -1, our k value is actually -2, because that plus sign doesn't actually change this sign at all. All right, so those are where our asymptotes are going to be. We can plot those on the graph rather simply. So we've got -1 and -2. So x equals -1 is this line right here. And we're going to put them as dotted lines because they don't actually exist on the graph. And y equals -2 is right here. Now you might be confused that I just put a vertical line for x equals -1 whenever the x-axis is this line right here. And that's a horizontal line. Don't get confused with that because the reason why that the vertical line is x equals -1 is because the x value anywhere along this line happens to be -1. If I was to put a point right here, that coordinate is -1, +4. If I was to put a point here, that coordinate is -1, +1. If I was to put a point here, -1, -4. Notice that anywhere along that line, our x value is exactly -1, which is why we call that x equals -1. The same is true for our y value, or for our horizontal asymptote being y equals -2. So we have drawn those in. And the next thing it tells us to do is we want to translate the graph of y equals 1 over x. Well, 1 over x gave us a beautiful graph. That beautiful graph looked like this. This is our parent function. Now obviously this isn't where this graph is, because this graph needs to be shifted, and we need to translate this graph to the new location. So that just means that we shift this guy down here to the left 1 and down 2 units, and we get the same graph, it's just shifted, which is what we call a translation. So we want to include these arrows on the ends of our lines, and we can actually even increase the distance of our lines here, never crossing those asymptotes. Lastly, it asks us to find the domain and range of our function. Well, this is really simple. Our asymptotes were x equals -1 and y equals -2. Domain is your possible x values, and we know that we can't have an x value that's at -1. So we say x not equal to -1. Our range can't be at -2, so we write y cannot be at -2. And we're done. That's the problem.